The banking industry has seen significant changes in recent years. Just this past week, Minneapolis-based U.S. Bank announced it would close hundreds of branches, mirroring a trend nationwide. So what's behind the closings? In this week's Business Matters, Corey Bork sat down with the University of Minnesota business expert for some answers.
It's always difficult to pinpoint the cause of it.
Retail banking faces a period of uncertainty. Just last week, U.S. Bank announced it could close up to 450 branches, or 15% of its more than 3,000 branches in the coming years. We don't know yet which branches will be affected. However, we do know online and mobile banking is playing a role.
The long run.
University of Minnesota professor George John says it's a trend that will continue.
In some sense, it's a replay of what we see in retail. You know, Walmart's got a container, Amazon. However, there are differences. So in banking, there's been a consolidation going on for a good 25, 30 years since we deregulated banks, essentially. So we're unique as a country in having tens of thousands of banks, not to count credit unions. Most countries of the world, you have 3 or 4 or 5 big banks, and that's it.
And it's not just U.S. Bank closing branches. Wells Fargo and Bank of America are among other big banks to close branches in 2018. Professor John believes there's a reason for that.
Banks are notoriously poor at customer service.
But not all banks are closing branches. Here in the northwest suburbs, we have seen a number of credit union openings.
I've seen data which shows that people think of credit unions as old-style local banks. Whether it's objective or not, we perceive them as having better, friendlier consumer service.
While credit unions may see opportunity,
we could all use a little help when it comes to our money.
Places like U.S. Bank are in the midst of a digital makeover, rolling out new apps for customers. What comes next is hard to predict.
The digital thing is more complicated than we think. If you asked any banker, say 15 years ago, say 2001, 2002, around that time frame, oh, what do you think banking is going to look like in 2020? They'd say, oh, we're not going to use cash, we're not even going to use checks, it's all going to be cards and whatever. That day hasn't arrived.
Of course, not all branches or markets are created equal. Just today, U.S. Bank announced it will open branches in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it will test a new branch design that puts greater emphasis on digital banking.